Hey everybody, this is Nimesh Patel here with Asif Mansoor for our podcast, Gucci Turban. Sorry we've been MIA for a bit, but we're back now. Our first guest back, Prashanth Venkataramanujam. I can't even pronounce his last name.
Venkataramanujam.
Yes, there it is. Prashanth what?
Venkataramanujam.
He is a dear friend of mine, also co-creator, head writer, showrunner, executive producer of Patriot Act on Netflix with Hasan Minhaj. You guys know. He's the man behind the scenes making shit happen. We had an awesome conversation about his ascent in comedy and capitalism, oddly enough. Our dad joke comes from our dad jokes on Reddit from user Sicky Crimson. I bought some shoes from a drug dealer, Asif. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day.
That's actually good.
That's actually pretty
good. That's pretty good.
It's solid.
You can't match the cleverness and the groans factor of these jokes.
Yeah. I bought some shoes from a drug dealer. I don't know what he laced them with, but I've been tripping all day. That's great.
Yeah, a rim shot.
Boom, fantastic. I'm a professional comedian. Let's see if we have another one. Here's another dad joke. Two for this one because that first one wasn't the classic setup in that Asif has to say what. This one from dad jokes on Reddit, user Humble Noob 76. Asif, what do you call a communist sniper? A marksman. A marksman. Oh, that's fucking good. Oh man, I'm a professional comedian, Nimesh Patel. Two for that. That was fucking. We missed out. I've been sleeping on these. What'd you think of that one? A marksman. Perfect.
It's pretty
pun.
good.
That's a perfect pun.
It's. I get that they're good and I respect them. I don't know why they hurt me so much. Like I feel assaulted.
Because you wouldn't know in what context you would even ever ask that question or say that word. A marksman? Oh, a marksman, eh? A communist sniper, if I've ever seen. I mean, it's fantastic. Our story of the day. Asif, what's our story of the day?
Our story of the day is the ongoing congressional hearings of the big tech CEOs.
Oh,
AKA
Sundar and what's his name?
Young Zuckerberg.
Young Zuck. Jeff
Notorious
Bezos.
Bezos.
Tim cooking something up. Those guys.
Our overlords.
Our modern day robber barons, our modern day Rockefellers and Carnegies. Where are our trust busters? That's what we need. Those trust busters no longer exist.
I literally got through 7 minutes of it. And I tuned in right when Jim Jordan started talking. And his question to Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, was, is Google going to help Joe Biden get elected? And Sundar Pichai just tries to which he was doing the entire session, and every tech CEO is trying to do the entire session, was not answer a binary question or a question. And so, I got to draw it back and explain to you how this shit works, but they're not really explaining shit. And yes or no. And then he finally kind of relents that we don't really do anything bipartisan. And then Jim Jordan brings up some random email that some marketing exec sent 10 years ago about Latinos donating to Hillary Clinton. And then he's like, you fucking man. I'm just I can't. And watching Sundar Pichai just squirm to me, and I was like, Doug, you are a billionaire. If I was a billionaire, I would be lighting these motherfuckers on fire. Who's going to do anything to you? So what, you get fired, you're still a billionaire. That's the part that I couldn't understand. Congress isn't asking questions.
That's because you're not a billionaire, bro. You don't understand the things that they understand about being a billionaire. is you don't want to stop being a billionaire, so you need to keep these Congress hoes in check. And
or you make some like, no, it honestly feels like to me that all these dudes made a deal like with the Illuminati to get on top, and that's what they're worried about losing. Like it feels like they're worried about losing something other than their job.
No, they just don't like being in the public spotlight. They're fucking nerds, man. Sundar and Zuckerberg and Tim and maybe not Bezos, but they're all just fucking dweebs. And
yeah, but Zuckerberg's a nerd, but even he's like, yeah, fuck you.
Yeah, but he's a fucking computer, that guy. But that's the thing. It's like the thing with all of them is that they've because they're like socially liberal, or at least seen that way, they're like pro gay rights and pro civil rights, equal rights for everybody. We don't see that they're actually pure evil monopolists, or just like John D. Rockefeller, they just wear like Gap sweaters, and so no one thinks they're evil tycoons. But really, like the four of them have done more to destroy people's lives and displace people than like anyone in history almost that hasn't been a murderous villain. You know, like Zuckerberg's just like, yeah, people commit suicide while they look at content on our website and mark it as bad. I mean, I don't see how that's my problem. You know, Bezos, someone left one of his trucks in the middle of fucking BQE. He's like, quit. You know, he's like, no, we're not gonna shut our warehouses down because people have COVID. Like, let them work. Like that's the guy. That's who you're up against. These are people who just don't want to be grilled publicly because their whole life they've just been bullied, and they just still don't know how to answer to bullies like Congressman Jim Jordan. And also on the flip side of it, they're yelling at they're trying to tell a bunch of old people who can barely use iPhones how their tech monopolies aren't really monopolies. Just let us keep doing what we're doing. We swear we're good people. They're all full of shit as we use a Zoom and Gmail to communicate. But.
Yeah, I mean, my whole shit is that I agree with you. It's just that if I was a congressperson that doesn't know how to use an iPhone, I still know what the fuck Andrew Carnegie did and what John D. Rockefeller did. And I also just like mentally understand that if I'm a phone manufacturer, I need to get plastic, I need to get metal, and all of those markets are regulated. And I have to go and swim in those oceans and try to build a phone product. And then there's all this other extra shit. Like with tech and software, it's the same thing. If I have a social media app, how are you getting to news? How are you getting into marketing? Like you're getting into all of these tangential markets that aren't regulated, and that's why you're a fucking monopoly. I want some congressman to say that shit. Like ask them that question. Don't ask them if they're like surveilling people and helping Joe Biden or Trump get elected. Like, I don't give a shit because they're evil.
Yeah, but those guys don't ever know to ask those questions because they don't understand the inputs that go into all this stuff. That's why. That's all it is. So like, I remember when I was at, where was I? I remember, I forget where, but Chris was talking about when Zuckerberg first went on trial, like a few years ago, 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
And Chris is just like, you know what, watching that trial is like, it's like watching someone at trial who has zero stakes. Nothing happens to him no matter what happens in that conversation. His life changes not at all. He's just sitting, they're all just going through the motions, you know? And plus this whole shit was all digital. So it's like, they could just read, look, my lawyers could be right here if I'm Sundar Pichai and you don't know that they're there. I mean, you know that they're there, but you don't know that they're there. And they're just passing me notes that I just got to read from. It's a fucking sham, dude. It's just to pretend like they're doing something. But please follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Don't forget, our guest today on the show is co-creator, executive producer, head writer, showrunner, head guy in charge at the Patriot Act with Hasan Minhaj, my good friend, Mr. Prashanth.
Venkataramanujam.
Check it out.
Gucci Turban.
Patriot Act itself.
I'm stealing the company's Zoom account.
Nice. Why?
I don't know. I never changed the name. I don't know what's going on.
This is Asif. You met Asif before, right?
I don't think we've met before.
I don't think we have. No, we've never met. Nice to meet you, man.
Hey, nice to meet you too, man. Asif?
Yeah, Asif.
Cool.
A Hindu, a Muslim, and an atheist walk into a Zoom meeting. Let's see how this ends.
Wait, there was someone else on the call.
That was our boy, our Billy producer boy.
Oh, gotcha. Cool.
Wait,
yeah.
who's the atheist? Me?
Prashanth.
Oh, I did not. I don't come into these obviously doing any research.
It's not. I don't think that's public information.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't know, Asif, you know Prashanth. Prashanth is co-creator and executive producer, head writer, head Prashanth in Charge at the Patriot Act, Hasan show. And then he was on, Bill Nye? Bill Nye Saves the World?
Yeah.
You were on that?
I was on it. Like, I had a couple segments, but I was a writer.
Uh-huh. When did you start comedy, and then when did you I know in like our own conversations, you said you stopped doing stand-up for a minute, or you were doing it. That's how you started. What's the trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I started doing stand-up when I think 2005. Actually, it's actually a bizarre story because yeah, man. I started when I was like in high school. So
wait, how old are you?
33.
Yeah. So you you started. What, your senior year in high school?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, like I always knew that I wanted to do something like in the arts, like something like theater, performance, something was always like, I don't know.
Did you do that shit did you sing in like ICC, like those, the Indian Cultural Club programs? Well,
okay. So you want to know like the sort of like origin story.
Whatever you want to say, it's just crazy. You knew in high school you wanted to do something in the arts.
Well, most credit goes to my older sister. Mm-hmm. So it's just the two of us. She's 5 years older. Mm-hmm. And when we were growing up, she was like, she had a really tough time outside of just being the, first kid born, to my parents. She was born in 82. I'm 87. Uh-huh. And so just being the first female is already hard. But the second thing was that she's really like artsy. Like she just is a very like, she played like electric guitar growing up. She was really into like Nirvana and grunge and Pearl Jam and Van Halen and Led Zeppelin and like all these things where it's just like, it's almost like she had like a old white fish guy who was like her mentor, but never did. Like, it's like somehow she downloaded the tastes of like a white dude that was raised in the 70s. Do you know what I mean?
What's her name?
Preeti.
And
yeah.
She's 38.
She's 38.
That's so funny because my friend Shanali also.
Yeah, I know Shanali.
My friend Shanali is from Tennessee. She's a little older, but she has the same taste in music.
As my
sister. Played the electric guitar.
As her sister,
yeah. And she, like, so when I would come home from school, like, so we were a far enough age gap where we were never in the same grade, like school. Like when I was in elementary school, like we were too young, and then middle school, like she was gone by the time I got there. Same with high school and college. Right. But when I was in like 6th grade and she was like in high school, like we were just like roommates, and sometimes she would just like be jamming out at home, and she was pretty good at the electric guitar. She really like was into music and like art and all this really interesting stuff that's like, she never had someone that showed her that other than like her friend group. She was always like really like into that stuff. And then the coolest thing, this is why, I mean, there's actually a direct line from like her influence to like what I do now on the show. When I was 13 and she was 13 or 14 and she was 17 or 18, my dad, with like the business he was doing at the time, we had to go to a trade show in Las Vegas. So 13, I'm like, it's 2000, 2001, somewhere around that. And we're at the MGM Grand. We're staying at the MGM Grand. And my parents wanted to go gamble, but we couldn't go do anything. Yeah. And then my sister sees this, like, we've been seeing like all these types of shows and like magicians and dancers and Vegas shows, right? Like random Vegas acts for like families and kids. And then my sister is like, we walk past this poster of this guy and he's just in all black. And my sister's like, hey, can me and Prashanth go to this show? And my mom didn't know what it was. And my dad was just like, it was a comedian. Mm-hmm. And my dad was just like, oh, like he was always cool with that stuff. He was always really into like Letterman and John, like the Daily Show. Like he always had that stuff on in the background, really into like comedy and late night. And he buys us tickets, and we're like, and you know, there's like a minimum and all this stuff, but like, you know, I don't even know how I got in, to be honest, but didn't drink.
You were old looking 13-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess the scum stash I had at the time was just like, you're either into kids or you are a kid, and I don't know what it is. Turns out the comic that she was like, oh, you have to go see this guy, it was George Carlin.
Oh, shit.
So we go, I don't even know what's going on. I don't know what the show is. Like we go in, we get seated, and I'm like the youngest person there. And I'm young enough, but also old enough that I'm like, I would enjoy the show, but I was like, oh, we're going to see some sort of like weird Vegas Broadway show with like dancers and stuff. And I didn't quite know what was going on.
Perfect way to describe Carlin in 2000. Weird Vegas Broadway show.
Yeah, I don't know.
His sets were like that, though.
Yeah.
His sets had like these crazy cutouts of the city, and he was all black. That like it was a theater performance.
But I didn't know what was going on. So like the opener comes out, and he starts talking to the crowd, and you know, it's just like I remember him being a big dude, and he had the mic, and he was doing crowd work and getting the crowd warmed up, and I didn't know the show had started. Like I thought that like something went wrong and they sent this guy out to just like talk to the crowd because something had gone wrong backstage or something like that. And then he like finishes his set, and then like Carlin comes out, and it's like the place goes crazy. You know what I mean? It's like George Carlin in 2000, and he's like still in his prime. Like you remember the older specials, like 2000, he passed away in 2008. Like that one he put out like in 2006 or 2007, he's like, he just looks old. Like you're like, oh, he looks really old. But like in 2000, he still had he just had some pep in his step, you know?
Yeah.
He was still very like gravelly voice. His voice was like asphalt, and he was just bitching. You know what I mean?
George Bush hadn't destroyed him yet.
Yeah. And he starts telling, dude, he opens with this joke about how it's really sad when young women die because there's all this good pussy that goes to waste. Like, hilarious. It's intense, right? It's intense joke. And he talks about how it's too bad there's no business where you can like harvest the pussies and sell them to like old guys, and they just look for good pussy like you would papaya. And he like picks it up and he starts.
Christ, George. Oh.
Dude, it's intense. Like he opens with this like crazy vulgar joke, and like the place is going apeshit. Like this is 2000, you know, like there's no like PC anything, there's no like Twitter, there's no like people are howling, I'm cracking up. Right. And the set is just like crazy political, crazy vulgar, crazy whatever. And I remember the show ended, it was spectacular. He did like an hour and 10, and like it was incredible. He did the 10 Commandments routine, he did all these like really like legacy bits. And the show gets over, and it hadn't even dawned on me that I saw like seminal work from like one of the greatest comedians to ever walk the earth. You know what I mean? Like your Mount Rushmore is, you know, there's maybe 10 guys that can be on it between like Chappelle, Bruce, Carlin, Pryor, you know what I mean? Rock, like these guys, like these juggernauts of comedy, you know? And I get done and I tell my sister, I was like, what was that? And she was just like, he's a comedian. And I was just like, but he's been in like movies here and there. And like, you know, I knew about like Shining Time Station and all that stuff. And I was like, that's what he does? And I remember asking her, she's like, yeah, he just talks. Like he just does comedy. And I was just like, that's it. It just tore a hole in the space-time continuum for me. And like, after that, I was just like, that's awesome. Like something, I always knew the concept of day jobs. I knew the concept of people like working 9 to 5. And I knew that there was a whole strata of jobs that were just like beyond that realm. And when I knew that like, he spent his life just in the world of ideas, I was like, I just want to do that. Mm-hmm. And then right after that, 14, 15, because I'm in Chicago, improv was the thing. Like you'd heard stories of all these people getting plucked up from SNL, right? Out of Chicago. Second City was here. It was like, oh, if you're in Chicago and you want to do comedy, you do improv. And so I started looking into like teen programs for improv to be like, oh, I want to, like, maybe I could go take classes Second City, like 14, 15, 16. And then, you know, all stand-ups are kind of egomaniacs in that, like, you don't want to play nice with others. You're like, I think the thing I think is the funny. Like, I just want to do what I think is funny. I don't want to, like, do heralds and play yes and with these motherfuckers. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so 16, 17, I started dabbling in stand-up. And my first shows, I couldn't even go to open mics. I would do shows in living rooms for like my high school friends. Like I would do like 5-minute sets, and then like, it was like weird. Like there were points where like my friends would invite other friends over, and then we would form this group where a bunch of my friends would try out stand-up, or we could put on these like variety shows in my friend's basement. And like 60, 70.
Ciphers.
Yeah, it was like 60, 70, I'm not kidding, like 50, 60, 70 kids would be packed in this basement, and we'd rig up this little spotlight and a little mic situation, and we would put on shows like once every month.
That's incredible.
It was wild. And then after that, like everybody got real, and they were like, all right, I got to go to college and do real shit. And I was the one fucking idiot that just continued, was just like, no, I want to keep doing this. Yeah. And then through college, I was just, yeah. And then through college, I was still doing stand-up, and there were parts of me that wanted to drop out, but I just finished the degree that I knew I could finish in 4 years. Then I started doing open mics. And then by the time I hit 22, I was just like, okay, I'm going to do this for real, which means like, I'm going to get good in Chicago. I'm going to do sets. I got on like the college circuit pretty young, like around 23, 24. And I did that from like 23 to like 26, 27. Like I was like doing a lot of colleges, and I was doing a lot of local clubs, but mainly my road work was like in colleges. And then when I could, I would do sets at clubs that I could get in, you know what I mean? Like here and there. But mainly like Zanies was like a home club, the Improv in Schaumburg, and then this place called the Comedy Bar downtown. So I was just doing the rotation of like the main clubs. And then I would go up in like Milwaukee, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin. Like when you come up in the Midwest, you basically get to like, the only way to get stage time is by doing like the circuit road. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, man. So then like my thinking was like, I knew like, so that the age above me was like TJ Miller, Kumail, those guys. So like right when I got to Chicago, those guys were going to LA.
Right.
And they'd gone to New York. And so there were like all these spots open. Like, it's almost like there was like a class that left and then a class that migrated into it. So I came up with like Lisa Traeger, Megan Gailey,
the homies,
CJ, Drew Michael. Drew Michael and I started comedy together in Champaign, Illinois. Who else am I thinking of? Like Kenny DeForest, Clark Jones,
Will Niles,
like all those guys. We're all cool. Like we're all like, I don't kick it with them as much as I'd love to, but they're all really funny. That was like my class, like
right.
Joe Kilgallen, Danny Callis. I don't know if you know those guys from Chicago,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that was basically like my class. And then they continued to stand up, and then I was still doing stand up. But then basically like right around 24, 25, 26, I was like, I moved to LA, and I was basically at this juncture where I was like, you know, I don't know, this sounds humble braggy, but like people were like, your jokes are not good on the road because they require too much thinking. They were like, you're trying to like build this argument, and you can see it in some of the clips I still have up. There was like, you're trying to like, my manager kept being like, just start submitting packets, because I really think that like the way you think, like you should start putting together writing samples. So I started doing just tons and tons of submission packets, started running out of money, got a day job. And just basically at that point, I was just like, okay, if I'm going to be able to have the career I want, I basically was at a juncture where I was like, I can keep grinding it out at stand-up, or I can try, or I really wanted to work in TV. And so I basically pivoted, and I was just like, okay, I'll get back to stand-up at some point, but I'm just going to go hard on like scripts, screenplays, writing packets, and submissions. And like and right when I moved to, so I met Hasan in 2009. We did college gigs together. He was like a couple years older than me. Then when I moved to LA in 2011, he actually hit me up when I got to town, and he was just like, do you want to start writing together? Like, do you want to like start? Because I feel like we get along pretty well. Like, he was basically like, do you want to be writing partners kind of thing?
Right.
And he was smart enough to have the vision of just like, all of the things that have popped for me or the things that I've worked best on are things that I've worked with other people on. Like, he was good about always trying to be like, I want to build a team of people that we can keep working together. And like our partnership just kind of always, even when we had nothing going for us, stuff was always like happening. So like we wrote a screenplay together and it got optioned, and we would write pilots and it would get us meetings. But like all the stuff we did like individually was always like kind of meh, you know? And then when he got Daily Show, he moved to New York, and then I was still submitting, and then I got in with Netflix. And then it was like the perfect storm where his special got put on Netflix. I was at Netflix. And then when we came up with like the show idea, we had worked on speeches together. We were doing correspondence dinner. Like we were getting some big opportunities. And then it just made sense to be at Netflix for Patriot Act because we had relationships there, but separately. And I had also sold another show to Netflix called The Fix with Jimmy Carr. So like I had like a...
I remember that when I was at SNL, you came and you had just...
Yeah.
Trayvon, it was you, Trayvon, Hasan.
Me, So like at that time, like that show, basically I didn't have enough credits. And so we had my manager and we had to partner with another team. Asif Ali was also part of that, another production company. And then, you know, basically like they were the ones that helped usher it. But it was kind of interesting. It was really cool I got super lucky in that like Netflix was buying a lot of talk at the time, and I got to see how differently shows can be packaged and sold. And I got to see how two different routes and what those results yield. Like there's just no show that's ever sold and packaged in one way. Like it's all so winding.
It takes different. A lot of creative people behind the scenes to make something like thread the needle of what someone's looking for.
Yeah, it's like this confluence of like, what's the idea? What are people buying? Whose schedule is available? And who can actually execute it? Like who can produce it? And all of those things need to be they need to like all hit at the exact same moment, and then a show gets created. But without that, it's really hard. And then this is the other thing, man, like my biggest thing, like going through the process twice now, and like even seeing like Bill Nye, like that show, like I was just a writer, but seeing it start, you know, go and then end, like one of the things that I just get so nervous at, but people still do it, is like they get so excited about the Deadline article or the Hollywood Reporter article where they go, I sold a show, or I'm on a show, or this thing is happening and I can finally share it. You know what I mean? Like that happens a lot. And I get so anxious when I see that happening, because I'm like, the Deadline article means nothing.
Right.
Like you have to make it. You have to make the show. And it has to be, there's so many steps still. You have to launch the show. You have to make sure it finds an audience. You have to make it sustainably. It has to like retain its core audience. You know what I mean? Like for a show to actually be successful, it takes so much work. Like the Deadline article is like just the beginning. So there's always a part of me, I don't know, maybe I need to be better about this, but like it's very dangerous. Because like Deadline articles come and go, but like the real important stuff is like sticking with that shit. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I mean, have you enjoyed any of your success? Jesus Christ.
I think you know me well enough to know that the answer is a resounding no.
The walls could crumble at any time. Deadline means nothing. I mean,
yeah,
you're doing well, man.
So yeah, I don't know if that, I mean, you're basically like, what's the origin story? But that's basically been like my trajectory over the last like 15 years, which is so crazy to say out loud.
That's nuts, yeah. I mean, I didn't start comedy until 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I met Hasan.
Only 11? That's still a long time.
I know, I mean, but it feels like when you say 15, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? 15 years ago, freshman in school.
Yeah.
And I was right. Yeah, I was a sophomore, but 15 years ago. Yeah, but like I saw Chappelle for the first time ever. You know, like to think that I was never like, oh, I'm gonna do comedy. I didn't think about doing comedy until 4 years after that.
Yeah.
And even that was like, maybe.
I was actually just talking to Hasan about you weirdly just the other day about how like you are such a, everything about your demeanor and your affect, you're so much more of like a purebred stand-up than me or him, in my opinion. Like there's a couple things about comedy, like this is the way I think about it. This is my framework for like, there's stand-up TV, I should say stand-up specials, TV and film. And the thing, like being a great stand-up to me is like being a great like sushi chef. Like it's very popular, but the skill sets to make like great world-renowned sushi, like there's 4 or 5 key skills you need to know. Same with stand-up. Like you need to have a good personality. Like you need to have a voice. Like your voice needs to sound interesting. Like my voice is like high and tenory. Like it's like, if you think about great stand-ups, there's like a gravel.
I would listen to a lecture if you were to give it.
That's not stand-up. That's the problem. I'm giving you a PowerPoint right now. That's why I'm engaging. But you've got that. Like you've got a good voice for stand-up. You've got this laid-back demeanor for it. And you've got like a personality that lends itself to stand-up. Like you can maximize all 4 of those things. Like you think about like Pryor and Carlin and Chappelle and all these people, like they all have very distinct, I'm literally talking about the timbre of your voice. Yeah. Like, what do you sound like? They all have very distinctive styles. There's like a storytelling that comes through. Like,
I just started, sorry to cut you off.
No, go for it.
I was just, like, I'm working on this cartoon with a friend of mine, and we're voicing most of everything.
Yeah.
And I was watching old interviews of, like voiceover actors, and I happened upon the Chappelle Inside the Actors Studio.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that he went to acting school.
Yeah.
But he's a trained actor. And then you realize when you listen to the way he talks and the way he delivers stuff, and I only bring that up because it's tied to the voicing stuff, is like all of it requires a certain technique that you don't realize he's implementing. And the skills I'm trying to just add to the repertoire now, to the sushi chef repertoire. Just like being able to sing song in my voice is so, I never knew it as a thing to do.
Exactly. And here's the other thing that like when Chappelle's firing on all cylinders, and I think when great comics are, you know, there's the debate about like, because of the explosion of content, there's like a spectrum of specials now, right? Mm-hmm. You've got like, you know, the Ryan Hamiltons, Hannibal Buress, Sam Morrill type special, Mark Norman's. These are just like great singular joke delivery guys. Like they're not trying to tell like a long arc of a story over 50 minutes. They're like bouncing from anecdote to anecdote. They'll sprinkle in one-liners, punchlines, transitions, longer stories, 1 minute bits, 3 minute
killer
bits.
Jokes, yeah.
Yeah, killer jokes. They have a very great, it's a great meal. It's like a great tapas meal. Like they'll hit you with a transition joke that people don't pick up on. Then they'll do a 3-minute story about dating or their roommates, and then they'll talk about themselves. There's a flow to it. Chappelle and these comics like Chappelle actually they'll do that, but their set will be broken out into longer chunks. So if you notice, like sometimes younger comics, if you look at Bill Burr, there's a perfect case study. So Bill Burr, when you look at his old albums, he's got 25 tracks that are all a minute apiece. Uh-huh. When you look at comics that are coming into their own, their albums start to go from 25 tracks that are all 1 minute to 8 tracks that are 7 minutes. You'll start to see, they'll start to think of their act in these chunks, these stories, these arcs, as opposed to just like singular bits that are just transitioning. You know what I mean?
On my next album, I'm going to have 1 track.
Yeah. But you'll see that. Like my point with Chappelle was like, he doesn't go on the full one-man show of like Colin Quinn or like even what Hasan's doing or Biglia, but there are big storytelling aspects to his specials. There are long threads. He'll pay off stuff that he did in minute 1 and minute 47. He'll keep hitting callbacks. He'll set these things up and he'll let them play out, you know? He's a great storyteller, but he doesn't come off sort of like a one-man show ever. No. He comes off like a comedian. You know what I mean?
He's a wizard with it.
Yeah. He hides it very well, but he knows he has a very large dynamic range of performance.
I rewatched Chris's Bigger and Blacker, and I was like, I remember why it remains the best special to me. It's like it's got all the connections. He's got callbacks in it. He throws it like he ties like minute 1 to like minute 15. And you're just like, what the fuck? And I remember thinking when I first saw Bigger and Blacker, I was like, how the fuck did we go from white kids shooting up the school to a blowjob at the end? And like, you don't even remember. It's so well connected that you don't even realize he's jumping from one thing to the next. Like he goes from white kids shooting the school to Clinton to the parents to how he was raised to being married. I was like, how the fuck does he do all this? And then you watch again. Oh yeah, that's also
like
masterwork.
Bigger and Blacker is full calorie Chris Rock.
Voices.
But even think of his voice.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying. Even with him, think of his voice during those specials. Like he turns it up. There's Chris Rock.
Yeah.
And then there's Chris. You know what I mean? It's like he knows it. And I think like you've got that. Like you've got the ability to be full calorie Nimesh with your voice and with your demeanor. Whereas like sometimes what I feel like there's a good stand-up special in me. But for me, what mine's going to be is like more, not to say I'm at this caliber, but if I do something in the future, it'll be more Carlin-esque where it'll be like arguments and bits. It's not going to be like, sometimes I don't know if people are going to be like, yeah, I just want to kick it with Prashanth for like an hour. Whereas like with you, it's kind of like, yeah, exactly. Whereas like with you, it's like, yeah, I'll get high and watch Nimesh's special. You know what I mean? Like I just want to kick it with this.
What high praise. I mean, so you're working on one?
No, there's parts of my story and parts of stuff that I think about that I'm like, oh, that would be really good for something I want. I've always thought this, and I don't know if it's true, but I've always been like, older age will sit well on me because of just things I think about. I sometimes think, you know this, like I get so in my head, it sounds like I've got the worries of like a 55-year-old man.
Yeah.
Resting on, you know what I mean? I think like I'll be more comfortable older than I am like.
Why? Because you think your thoughts now are too old?
I think that they don't match, you know, like.
What?
I'm a dark person. Like I think about real fucked up shit, you know? And
you know what I thought that was real fucked up 2 nights ago? Do you think? What if you found out that Hitler meditated? That was a thought that I had. Like this.
You know what's funny? It would make complete sense.
Of course, he meditated.
Yeah.
He meditated. He did Tai Chi. You got to focus when you're mission driven to be an asshole on that level. Right?
Yeah.
Like, of course he did.
I mean, the problem. I mean, there were people that would kill to be as productive as Hitler. That's the problem. You know what I mean? Like he was too effective. Like when you're that evil and that effective, you can get a lot of shit done.
How was he staying calm is the question.
I don't think he was. Dude, have you heard that like all the Nazis were basically doing like crazy amounts of like heroin, like a type of heroin and opiate?
Meth. Yeah.
Yeah. I never heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were like crazy hopped up on like meth and all this, there's weird opiates.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So was Hitler. I mean, Hitler had like a daily dose of like opiates and shit like that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you are dark. If you're fucking reading about what the Nazis were doing to
Yeah. Looking for productivity techniques.
If the Nazis could stay calm during their fucking war crimes, I shouldn't be this stressed about work. Yeah, I mean, I think that would make for a great special. Why don't, like when Hasan goes on the road, why don't you just open?
I may. It's more of like, it depends on like what the, he's offered. It's just a matter of like, what do I have to say? Because
Everything.
What do I want to talk about? That's that's the most important thing.
You have nothing to lose when you go up.
No, it's not about nothing to lose. And it's kind of like a bike. Like I would need like, I mean, there was a period of like 7 or 8 years where I don't think I went longer than a week without doing a set. I was like really like, I did stand up really hard for a really long time. So if I went back to stage and I had like my 10 minutes, I would be able to, it would be like a bike. But now I'm at the stage where I realize, and this is like what I think is key for like any artist, whether you're a musician or a comic or a filmmaker, it's like, what do you want to say? It's like, there's so many talented singers, dude. Like there's so many people that can sing like Taylor Swift, like Beyonce. There's people that can hit those notes, but they're not songwriters. You know, they don't know how to like, they can do covers, they can do that kind of stuff, but do you have something to say? Like that's what separates them from being able to like do that kind of shit.
What are you thinking about now? Like what you say you're having dark thoughts. We're all
there's
like
sometimes
of the
where
same age, you know?
There's sometimes where I think that the message that I want to tell the world is not something the world really wants to hear. Like the things that I believe are things that people don't, it's not like palatable for a mainstream audience.
What mainstream audience do we have?
No. Meaning like if I were to try to do a special or if I were to whatever, like I just think some of the things I believe are just things that people like left and right, like people just don't want to swallow it. They're just like,
but there's no
like
such
eugenics.
Yeah. So
I just can't imagine like everything.
I've got two words for you: race and IQ. People aren't ready for this.
What did Carlin say when you were 13 that caused you, like, you could, mainstream audiences don't exist anymore.
That's true.
You could find a fucking, all you need is 300 Prashanths in every city that you want to do comedy in, and you're good. It's not like you're doing it for the money.
Yeah.
Until you are, but, you know. What's kept you from the stage? Like, sorry, go ahead, Asif.
I mean, I don't know you, and we just met, but I feel like you just got to let it fly, man, because what's the worst thing? Like, the worst thing that could happen to any of us and all of us as human beings is death. And it seems like people don't give a shit about that. So why not just get on stage and just let it rock, you know?
No. It's not coming from a place of, I'm not saying this to be whatever. It's not coming from a place of fear. It's coming from a place of like, I've always been a guy that's like, I want to craft the hour or the 45 minutes. I've never been like, oh, I want to get 10 minutes. I've always wanted to be like, oh, I want there to be like a larger punchline built into the whole thing. And I want the stories to all play off of one another. And I want there to be like a theme and some ideas. It's more of like, if I do it, I would need to clear a lot of runway in my life to go, okay, I'm going to put aside like any TV projects or writing projects or stuff me and Hasan may be working on, and just go like, okay, I'm going to take the next 2 years and just go, okay, I'm going back into the trenches, and I'm going to try and like just start getting up and getting back into it. And I'd have to figure out like, what do I think is worth saying from me? You know what I mean? Because there's so much stand-up out there. There's so much content. And I'm just thinking about like, what would be important that I feel is like worthy of spending those 2 years on putting together like an hour.
You're being too precious with whatever you think is so dope in that brain of yours that you can't start putting it out. Like, you can't work on it 10 minutes at a time. You know what I mean? It's like, what? Look, man, you're a very accomplished and successful guy, but you're not going to fucking shit out 2 hours. You're not going to shit out an hour, 2 years without like getting on stage for like 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah. That for sure. I think there's also a bit of like, you know, like everybody, like at this point in our 30s, like everybody kind of yo-yos. Like there's like with health, like there's points where you'll be like, oh, I'm getting kind of chubby, I haven't been worked out, and then you'll go hard and you'll get back into it. And I think that like when you go hard and you get back into like working out and stuff, it's similar to stand-up where it's just like, okay, I have to make the conscious choice to just do that. Do you know what I mean? Because you can't get good at stand-up if you're not doing it 7 times a week. You know what I mean?
Right.
You gotta be, it's gotta be a discipline to be like, because if you do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes, if you do one workout a month, that's just pointless. You're never gonna get back on.
If COVID hadn't happened and you guys were on break right now, you wouldn't do. I mean, I know from when I was at SNL and from like people who are still there, like whenever they're not working, they're on stage.
Yeah.
Like, would you be doing that?
I would be thinking about it for sure. Yeah.
I'm just trying to get a confirmed date out of you as to when you go back to doing stand-up.
Who gives a shit? I'm not Eddie Murphy.
so I can be there and boo. I'll just turn to everyone left and right. What the fuck is this guy talking about? I didn't know this was a fucking brown TED Talk. You know? But do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there. One of the last times I saw Prashanth was when I had to do a gig at the CEO,
that was a wild night.
CEO of a e-cigarette company.
Oh, is that what it
Juul?
was?
Yeah, no,
I don't even know if you could say that.
It wasn't Juul. It was something else. But it was like the CEO, his loft. And they had in Tribeca, and I was on like the 7th floor, elevator straight up, and it's a dinner party, and I forget, Prashanth, we had like met up for drinks or some shit, and then I was like,
yeah, we got dinner, and then you were like, do you want to just roll to this thing? And I was just like, hell yeah.
Let's go to the show, and we go.
There's nothing I love more than like strange stand-up experiences.
Oh, it was wild, bro. It was a wild time because we went in. And immediately, like, we were told not to go left out of the elevator. We had to go right, take our shoes off.
Yeah.
And then go, like, into this back bedroom.
Oh, you're missing a key part of this detail.
Uh-huh.
We go up in the elevator, and, it's like a private residence. And the woman who was coordinating the whole thing saw me. I get out of the elevator, and she's like, oh, you can't have a guest, Nimesh. And then Nimesh was like, oh, no, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And she's like, no, this is like a private place. You can't have it. And then I was like, dude, it's fine. I'll just meet up with you afterwards. I don't want to like ruffle feathers. And Nimesh just like is like, I'm not performing if he can't come up. Just like he's willing to die on this molehill for whatever reason, which is exactly who you are. And I appreciated it. But he literally was just like, I'm not doing it then. Bye. And she's like, fine. Like whether he's got a full house or he's got nothing, Nimesh is like all in. Like there's he's never not. He's always just going all in on everything.
Why not, man? What? Look, Prashanth, I'll be honest. If it was like $5,000 that they were paying me and they're like no guests, I'm like, I'll see you later, bro. But it was like $125. Yeah. Which is still a lot. Which is $125, which was still a lot of money for like 10 minutes down the street from the cellar. But it was the principle at that point. I was like, what do you mean? It's someone's living room. It's not a fucking security guard at the fucking. There's no diplomats here. So we go in, take our shoes off, and put on booties. I think. Yeah,
it was like
the whole staff. There's a whole cooking staff. Like 20 people making all kinds of gourmet shit. Go up, and it's some rich ass lady peddling some kind of silver soap. Remember that? That's what she was. That was
like
her.
Goop?
No, it was not. The CEO's wife was like selling like this fancy soap. That's why it was a dinner party for her and like a launch of her fucking nonsense. And she was so. If I could tell, she wanted to be condescending and rude, but all of her friends were there. And then got off stage, told them I was like, "Fuck you," like, cause she insulted me. I was like, "I don't need your money. You're not paying me on like $1,000 to be here." Left, and Prashanth, I just remember thinking, that was a wild ass stand-up night that I will never forget because I had so many insults pop up in my brain after.
Dude, you were openly antagonizing the crowd.
Oh yeah, that's also true.
Did they pay you?
Yes.
Did they feed you?
No.
Okay.
I was openly antagonistic, but only because it felt like one of those places where that was the Illuminati. That's the right wing constituency of New York.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Can I also tell you, I had a moment while I was there. I don't know if we talked about this, where I was just like, oh, this is why capitalism will eat us all. I had okay, so I was sitting there and I remember just looking around. It's like super wealthy white people.
Yeah.
You know, living like this. If you rented this place, this is easily like a $7 or $8 million property. Like the rent on it alone would have been like $15,000 to $25,000 a month minimum.
Oh yeah, it was nice.
And it was nice. And there was a whole staff. They like a walled off staff. I mean, like there was a staff of like 15 people all there to serve maybe like 25 or 30 people. Yeah. There was like one staff member. Like the ratio was like 1 to 2.
Yeah, it was nuts, dude.
And I remember just being like, wow. This is what rich people do. Like they bring their restaurant to their house. They'll just pay like thousands of dollars. Like that dinner party easily costed like $20,000 to pay all the staff, to pay for all the food, the drinks, all that stuff. And I remember talking to one of the servers, this girl. She's probably like mid-20s, late 20s, one of the servers there. And I remember just trying to like commiserate with her because I was off in the back while Nimesh was performing because I was trying to like stay out of sight. And I remember telling her, I was like, isn't this fucking weird? I was like, isn't this weird that we're just here and like you're just in this person's house and like you're serving them and like my friend's performing for them and there's this whole economy built around like us showing up and just serving these rich ass people. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And we're guilty of it, like Uber Eats, all this stuff. We're the poor man's version of that, but like they can afford to bring a restaurant, a full-fledged restaurant. And I remember the server probably making like $17 an hour, right? 17, $20 an hour, something like that. And she was just like, wait, what's wrong with that? And I was just like, everything is wrong with that. I was like, what do you not? And she was just like, well, if you can afford it, like, there's no problem with it. Like, they can afford it and we can do this for them. And I was just like, we are lost. Because the problem is people like her have bought into the fact that this is normal. And this is like, okay, you know what I mean? For like the average person, because I bet in her head, she's like, I want to be that lady. I want to be that lady that makes like $1 million a year. And if I make enough money, I'll hire the version of me to come serve me. And I'm like, the problem is not that rich people buy into the system. It's that poor people buy into it.
Now we're talking about something, Prashanth. Ooh, Nelly. All right, Asif, you want to go? Let's talk capitalism. But I mean, I could see her point though.
I see her point too, but there's no part of her that's like, yeah, I'm gonna take the money, but it is like fucked up. Like this is just the way like life in New York is. You know what I mean? Like you can.
I always hesitate to put myself in any one of those conversations. Was like, I don't know what this person who is super rich or on the serving side is thinking when it comes to like how much they need whatever it is they're doing. So like this lady is like, she sees nothing wrong with it because like she's putting food on her table too.
No, it's true, literally. But I just mean like that there's like enough rich people in Manhattan that private catering services are a viable business.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
When we were on that elevator, there was a Russian lady that got, because remember we went to like the 10th or 15th floor. We were like two Russian people got on. We're like, oh, my bad.
Dude, that's the one thing that still like blows my mind about New York. Like everywhere you go, like it's unfathomable how much money is in that city. Mm-hmm. Like it's unfathomable.
New York is great.
So it's fun. Like the story is interesting because when I went to Bangladesh in '03, and I don't really go that often or really ever want to because I don't have a lot of family back there, but I have like a distant uncle that runs like a garments factory that, you know, hires kids who are making $20 a month to sew dresses for Zara, essentially, in H&M. I know you guys did a great piece on that, so shouts to you for that. But
thanks.
I have a distant uncle who ran that factory, and I went there specifically to do some humanitarian work to really kind of understand like the village that my parents and my grandparents came from. I wanted to affect some change on some like privileged Westerner thing. And I remember touring the factory and seeing the horror of it, you know, and back then it was much worse than it is now, even though it's still not great. But, you know, seeing kids with their hands dyed, stained of whatever dye station they were working at, permanently being stained. And I remember going to my uncle's office after he toured, and he was like really proud that I'd seen his enterprise. And I was like, dude, what the fuck is this? Like, how could you like smile? Like, I'm horrified by this. And he casually looked at me and said, like, if I didn't have this factory here, all those kids would be dead.
Yeah. No, this is the tricky thing about, like, do you know there's this concept in economics of just like the textile, the boon of textiles. So like every 2 decades or so, the textile center point of the world shifts to the next developing economy, right? Like it's like Bangladesh, like before it was like in China, like their middle class. It's like it's always like the emergent developing country. And it just, the ball keeps shifting to when that country achieves a certain level of wealth and there aren't people that are willing to do those kinds of jobs. Then they'll find another country that's too poor, you know, that's on its way up.
Right.
And it is like that weird liberal guilt you bring to it because you're like, yeah, it is true. Like Foxconn plants are super shitty for iPhones, but there's a huge swath of Chinese middle class people that are out of like being like poor farmers that can like make money, send it back to their families. And like we apply this sort of weird Western guilt to it when in reality, like they may be choosing to do that, you know, for the betterment of their family and they have a path forward. So it's a hard thing to reconcile.
Yeah, I remember him having a BMW, which was a big deal in Bangladesh. And the funny thing was the air pollution is so bad that the German air filters you couldn't actually drive the car. So he had a fleet of BMWs in his estate that he couldn't move, he couldn't touch. And he would just have his staff go and just turn on the car every 3 months. And I was like, dude, how about you have one of those and you can like feed these kids, or like just hire 18-year-olds and not 13-year-olds or something like that. And it didn't compute. But then I remember like, maybe if you hired 18-year-olds, you'd make less shitty Zara dresses that don't, like I tried to appeal to him on like the capitalist mindset. And it's just nothing like it just made me feel doomed about the entire situation. And like, I understand that like the buck's going to get passed to wherever because prices get driven down and there's this like high-minded economic discussion that I'm definitely not, you know, not the right person to have those conversations. But I wonder about like specifically like what values that, because this is my dad's like distant cousin. And I wonder about what values that he had. My dad, he shared whatever, I mean, they grew up in the same kind of environment, and like how that plays out over here. Like, are we just like doomed to be like rank capitalists? Like, that's the part I can't reconcile. Like how, like for our parents and my parents, like, yeah, you care about Bangladesh, you care about the people there, but do you really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough because like, yeah, these are all places where it's like, you have people like a lot of people in our family who, in our types of families, like they're trying to get theirs too. You know what I mean? They're trying to like make money, and like fundamentally capitalism is not about getting everybody to reach the ceiling. It's about raising the floor, like minimally, you know, it's, yeah.
Yeah, that's like the trick of capitalism, is that everyone is that the losers have been convinced that they can still be winners.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
Like, that's the server being like, what do you mean? What's wrong with that? But it's like that's a like diminishing what she's saying, and because she's also the server's also right about what's wrong with that. It's because she's putting food on her table, but you have to like destroy the entire foundation of the economy to make it such that we could all be on a level playing field and then rise together, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the short answer is we're fucked. Capitalism is going to eat us all. Yeah, do stand up on that. I'm trying. I've been saying on stage a few times I've been up, but socialism is awesome. You know, the fucking minimum unemployment that everyone's getting. Like, this should be like, imagine you could just get your rent and your healthcare paid every month. What would you really like? Then you could be free to do whatever the fuck you wanted.
It's bad for comedy because then be more comics.
Yeah, but it'd be good because there'd be a lot more shitty comics, and then the good ones would be even would rise even faster. I would hope. I don't know.
I don't know how socialism bit. How is your socialism bit going over well with these crowds?
I've done it once, twice. You know, it has been hard to like try. Just I need to be on stage to do like I need to think on stage a lot, and the being on stage will force me to write a lot more. And because it's all very iterative, like a billion times I'll just find something on stage that I didn't realize I was thinking. Not even necessarily like a joke, but just like a thought.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh shit, okay, I gotta make sure that I explore that thought later. You know, like I said the other day, like defunding the cops, the joke I was getting to would a show called Defunded Cops would be hilarious. And it's just like a dude riding up on the city bike and shit. But the thought of money being reallocated, I didn't even add it to like neighborhoods as opposed to police departments and like invest in a community. Like that wasn't a thought I had until I got on stage and just thought about it out loud. Anyway, what was I saying? Socialism. Yeah, socialism hasn't been. I need to iterate it like a billion times.
And on that note, tip your wait staff.
Yeah, right. What else you got going on today?
Nothing, dude. I've just been, we've been on break, so I've just been, thinking about. I've just been catching up on stuff. Like I've been watching shows and just, thinking about, I've just been catching up on a lot of stuff.
You
been
watched
really awesome.
Norseman?
No.
Oh, it's so funny. It's on Netflix.
Norseman?
Norseman, yeah. It's like a comedy about Vikings. It's so funny. It's like
I watched Indian Matchmaking, which is
wild. What a wild show.
Was it good?
So the guy in the first episode is the guy whose fake ID I used in college.
Get out.
I swear to God. I swear on my mother.
Which guy?
That's crazy.
I don't know. Vinay.
Really? Wow.
Remember when we were at on Bleecker Street, and you and I were on Bleecker Street. We tried to get into this bar. I used that ID, and they look at me and go, "You're not 5'10", and they fucking took the ID. They took Vinay's ID.
Vaguely.
I distinctly remember that.
He went to Dub?
No, he was like friends. He was like friend of a friend of my. He was like my roommate's older sister's friend, and she got the ID for him, and then he got another better ID that looked like him, and they thought that I looked enough like Vinay, so I was Vinay for 4 years in Washington D.C.
That fucking a horse tooth herb. Fucking that guy's a herb, bro.
I've never met him, but I've been him. I've lived.
He's a herb. That show is wild, Prashanth. I can't ruin it for you. You should watch at least a few episodes because you could see the game being played so clearly about like how Netflix is trying to penetrate into the Indian market. So they've got like they've got people in Mumbai who are being match made, and they've got people in the States being match made. They got a lady who's based in Mumbai, so she's got like classist and casteist and racist tendencies, but then it's like she goes to a pundit and all this kind of. It's wild, bro. It's wild, but it has achieved what it set out to do, which is get every Indian person in the world talking about this goofy ass show.
There was a joke we were going to put on the show, but we didn't. We wanted to do it, but we almost had like too many kind of Netflix jokes in this one episode. But there was a joke that I wanted to do about how like every Netflix show is now like the title of the show is their demo that they're trying to hit. Like it's just so transparent. So like there's just going to be shows that come out that's like gay Puerto Ricans 18 to 25.
Yeah, they're just giving up.
Yeah, like they have a show called Tall Girl.
Tall Girl?
Yeah, or a movie. I think it's called Tall Girl. But yeah, they're just becoming so transparent with their sort of market aspirations.
Tall Girl.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh.
Good for them.
Yeah. And a tall girl I know watched that movie.
I've got to see this. It's clearly about me. The Norseman is not intended, if that's the case, Norseman is not intended for us. But it is fucking so funny. It's about Vikings in the 700s. And it's like Viking village politics and like fighting and stuff. But the core of it are these like weird love stories, and they make so many rape jokes.
Really?
But they're like perfectly done. They're not like insensitive. It's just like you go to a village, you have to rape. It's so fun. Just watch it. I can tell that face of yours. You're like, there's no way these are like taste. No,
I'm just curious to know if they actually pull it off, or it's just like
fantastic.
Nimesh being insane.
No. No.
These are great rape jokes.
They are great rape jokes. That's the takeaway from this podcast. Nimesh Patel loves rape jokes. I mean, they're well done jokes. It's fucking. So just watch the pilot. You'd be like,
I will.
I gotta go see this. I gotta see the rest of this. That's what I've been watching.
Cool, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't want to keep you too long. We can talk for like 3,000 hours.
Yeah.
You got to bounce, right?
Yeah, I've got a few, but
okay.
I haven't been pinged yet by my overlord.
Dude, this is great, though. It's cool to just kick it and chat.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Whenever you want. Whenever you start promoting your capitalism is going to kill us all stand-up special.
That's right. We're living through right now.
From your glossy C-suite at Netflix's offices.
Cool, man.
Prashanth,
yeah, nice meeting you, man.
It's good meeting you, man. All right, I'll talk to you guys.
Peace, man.
Take care.
Thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Nimesh Patel with Asif Mansoor. This is Gucci Turban. Shout out to the Patriot Act and Prashanth for joining us today. All right. Thank you, guys.